Good morning, students. Today we are going to discuss about the abdominal aorta and the celiac trunk. The aorta, it is divided into different parts: aortic root, ascending aorta, aortic arch, descending aorta, also called as descending thoracic aorta, and abdominal aorta. So in this image we can see this is the aortic root, which begins at the aortic annulus, here the opening of the aortic annulus, and incorporates the aortic sinuses, aortic valve, and ends at the sinotubal junction. This junction wherein the aortic sinus joins with the tube of the ascending aorta, this is called as sinotubal junction. So till this level, this portion is called as aortic root. So these bulges what you are seeing are called as the aortic sinuses. As you all are aware that there is an anterior aortic sinus and two posterior aortic sinuses, right posterior and left posterior aortic sinus. So this is the root of aorta. Then the ascending aorta, this starts at the sinotubal junction and ends at the takeoff of the innominate artery, also called as brachiocephalic artery. This is the innominate artery here. So till this level, from the sinotubal junction to the brachiocephalic artery, so this area is called as the ascending aorta. Then arch of aorta, this is the arch of aorta. So this continues after the innominate artery and ends at the subclavian artery. So this portion of the aorta, it curves from the anterior portion of the chest cavity towards the back, right? So this is called as aortic arch. Then the descending aorta, this is the descending aorta, begins after the takeoff of the left subclavian here, okay, and then courses down through the thorax and then through the diaphragm here. So this portion is called as the descending aorta or the descending thoracic aorta. Then the abdominal aorta. So the thoracic aorta becomes the abdominal aorta once it passes through the diaphragm. This area, this is the diaphragm here, okay. So once it passes through this diaphragm, it is now called as the abdominal aorta, and this passes down starting at the level of lower border of T12 vertebra in the aortic opening of the diaphragm, which lies at the level of T12, lower border of T12 vertebra, and then runs downwards, and the abdominal aorta ends at the level or opposite the body of the L4 vertebra by dividing into two common iliac arteries, right and left common iliac arteries. So these are the parts of the aorta. Then the course and measurement of the abdominal aorta. So abdominal aorta begins as a continuation of thoracic aorta at the aortic opening of the diaphragm opposite the lower border of T12 vertebra. So here this is the T12 vertebra. So at this level the abdominal aorta is starting or beginning, and then passes in front of the vertebral column and slightly to the left of the inferior vena cava. This blue thing that you are seeing is the inferior vena cava. So abdominal aorta lies towards the left of the inferior vena cava, and it lies in front of the vertebral column. And here it ends by dividing into right and left common iliac arteries opposite the body. This is the L4 here. So opposite the body of L4, it ends by dividing into right and left common iliac arteries. And also you observe here it is not exactly in the midline, slightly towards the left side of the midline the aortic bifurcation is there, right. And then coming to the measurements, the length of the abdominal aorta is around 10 to 11 centimeters. So this length from lower border of T12 to the body of the L4 here, this length is around 10 to 11 centimeters, and breadth or the width here, it is 2 centimeters. Now coming to the topography of the abdominal aorta, so this surface anatomy is more important. It is going to be a part of your practical examination, so make sure that you remember all the surface anatomy of all the important structures. So for the abdominal aorta, the topography is it is represented by two parallel lines 2 centimeters apart. Here 2 centimeters apart you need to draw parallel lines. Where you have to start is this line indicates the transpyloric plane, right? So just above 2.5 centimeters above the transpyloric plane, that is the starting point or the beginning point of the abdominal aorta. Then bring it down towards the umbilicus, and 1 centimeter below and 1 centimeter to the left of the umbilicus, it ends, the abdominal aorta ends by dividing into common iliac arteries. So the surface anatomy, you should draw 2.5 centimeters above the transpyloric plane and a vertical two vertical lines, parallel lines, and bring it down to the umbilicus 1 centimeters below and 1 centimeter towards the left of the umbilicus. So here ends by dividing into two common iliac arteries. So that is the topography of the abdominal aorta. Now the relations of the abdominal aorta. So in front, so this is the abdominal aorta, and here the sagittal section, if we see, this is the posterior part and this is the anterior side of the abdominal aorta. So the anterior relations would be origin of the celiac artery. This is the celiac artery, and surrounding that there will be celiac plexus of nerves and covered by peritoneum of lesser sac. Then the celiac trunk, it is compressed between the papillary process of the liver from above and tuberomental of pancreas from below. So here this is the pancreas. So tuberomental of the pancreas will be there below, and above there will be papillary process of the liver, which is not seen in this diagram. So these form one anterior relation. Then another will be the origin of superior mesenteric artery. This is the superior mesenteric artery that forms one relation, and this superior mesenteric artery is overlapped by body of the pancreas here, okay, and the aorta is crossed by the splenic vein and left renal vein above and below the superior mesenteric artery, right? So this is the superior mesenteric artery, and then the body of the pancreas is there. Above the superior mesenteric artery the splenic vein is present, and below the superior mesenteric artery the left renal vein is present. All these structures also form the anterior relations of the aorta. And then next one will be the origin of inferior mesenteric artery. This is the inferior mesenteric artery, and this is crossed by the third part of duodenum here. The inferior mesenteric artery is crossed by third part of duodenum, and the anteriorly the abdominal aorta, here it is covered by the parietal peritoneum and crossed by the root of mesentery anteriorly, which is not seen in these images, but you have to remember anteriorly it is covered by parietal peritoneum and crossed by the root of mesentery. So all these structures are forming the anterior relations of the abdominal aorta. Then posteriorly what are the relations from behind? Bodies of upper 4 lumbar vertebrae will be there, because the beginning here it is shown wrong in this image. Lower border of T12 it should be shown actually, so it should come little towards the upper side. Right, so just bodies of upper 4 lumbar vertebrae, intervertebral discs and anterior longitudinal ligament. Right, so this forms the posterior relations, and also posteriorly you will see the lumbar arteries. Here you can see this is the lumbar artery. So origin of 4 pairs of lumbar arteries and the median sacral artery also seen, which is yeah, this is the median sacral artery here, and these dots, red dots what you are seeing, are the origins of the lumbar arteries. Right, 4 pairs of lumbar arteries which are the posterior branches of the abdominal aorta, so they are seen. And also it is crossed by 3rd and 4th left lumbar veins and left psoas major muscle. Left psoas major muscle will be there here posteriorly. Right, so this muscle is psoas major, and right, so these are the posterior relations. So bodies of upper 4 lumbar vertebrae along with their intervertebral discs and the anterior longitudinal ligament. Then origin of 4 pairs of lumbar arteries and median sacral artery is seen, and crossed by 3rd and 4th left lumbar veins. Also you will see the psoas major muscle. Right, so these are all the posterior relations of the abdominal aorta. Now coming to the relations on the right side, as you all can see clearly, this is the inferior vena cava. Inferior vena cava, and in the upper part you will see the cisterna chyli and thoracic duct, azygous vein, right crus of the diaphragm, and right celiac ganglion. So these are not very clear in this image, but so the more prominent structure which lies on the right side of the abdominal aorta is the inferior vena cava. Other structures which are present are cisterna chyli and thoracic duct will be there here, and azygous vein, the right crus of the diaphragm will be there, and right celiac ganglion. Right, so they form the relations on the right side. Now on the left side, there will be left crus of the diaphragm and left celiac ganglion in the upper portion. Then left side, another thing that we'll see is the duodenojejunal flexure, left sympathetic trunk will be there, and inferior mesenteric artery and its ascending and descending branches will be seen. Here inferior mesenteric artery and its ascending and descending branches will be seen at this level of L3 vertebra. Right, so the relations on the left side are left crus of the diaphragm, left celiac ganglion, duodenojejunal flexure. Here the duodenum will continue as the jejunum, so that is seen towards the left side of the aorta. So duodenojejunal flexure, and that lies at opposite the L2 vertebra here mostly. And then left sympathetic trunk and inferior mesenteric artery with its ascending and descending branches. So these are the relations on the left side. So we have seen the relations anteriorly, posteriorly, towards its right side, and on the left side. Now the branches of the abdominal aorta. So branches of aorta, these are arranged into 4 groups. What are these 4 groups? Ventral branches, which are lying anteriorly, then lateral branches, okay, and then dorsal branches, which are seen on the posterior aspect, dorsal branches, and then terminal branches. Right, so ventral, lateral, posterior, which lie behind, and terminal branches. 4 sets of branches. Now the ventral branches are from above downwards, this is the celiac trunk. Then the celiac trunk or the celiac artery, it is the unpaired artery of the foregut and rises opposite the lower border of T12. So the celiac artery lies at the lower border of T12 vertebra, and it is called as the artery of foregut because this is going to supply all the derivatives of the gastrointestinal tract which have developed from the foregut. Then next one is the superior mesenteric artery. It is also the unpaired artery of the midgut and arises opposite the lower border of L1 here. So superior mesenteric artery is called as artery of the midgut because it's going to supply the all the derivatives of the midgut. Then this is the inferior mesenteric artery. It is also an unpaired artery of the hindgut and arises opposite the L3 vertebra. So this is the artery of hindgut arising opposite the L3 vertebra. Right, so these are the ventral branches. Then coming to the lateral branches, all the lateral branches are paired, and from above downwards, inferior phrenic artery. Right, so this inferior phrenic artery, there will be two on either side because they are paired, right and left inferior phrenic arteries. Then there is a middle suprarenal artery which directly arises from the abdominal aorta, middle suprarenal artery. There is an upper and lower suprarenal arteries are there which are derived from other arteries, but middle suprarenal comes from the abdominal aorta. Then the renal artery, both renal arteries, right and left renal arteries, and gonadal arteries. So this is a gonadal artery. So gonadal arteries, in males it will be testicular artery, and in females it will be ovarian arteries. So these are gonadal arteries. So four pairs of lateral branches are there: inferior phrenic, middle suprarenal, renal and gonadal arteries. So these are the lateral branches. Now coming to the dorsal branches, or the for you to understand, in this image these dorsal branches are shown coming out from the posterior aspect, but you should understand that they are arising on the posterior aspect of the abdominal aorta. So dorsal branches are four pairs of lumbar arteries. These are called as the lumbar or the spinal arteries, four pairs of lumbar arteries, and a median sacral artery. It is a direct downward continuation of the primitive dorsal aorta. This median sacral artery is a direct continuation of the primitive dorsal aorta. So these are the posterior branches or the dorsal branches, four pairs of lumbar arteries and one median sacral artery which is a direct continuation of primitive dorsal aorta. And then coming to the last branches, these are the terminal branches, right and left common iliac arteries. So in this image we can also see the relations again. Left lateral will be sympathetic chain, right lateral you will see the inferior vena cava, cisterna chyli, and on both the sides, both lateral, you will see azygous veins, para-aortic nodes and celiac ganglia. Anteriorly you will see pancreas, splenic vein, left renal vein, third part of duodenum, mesentery, nodes, autonomic plexus, lesser sac, stomach, omentum, small bowel. So all this lesser sac, omentum and all these are the parts of peritoneum. You will understand it better in the further lectures. And then posteriorly you will see the bodies of upper four lumbar vertebra and lumbar arteries and veins. So these are the branches of abdominal aorta. Now we'll see the celiac trunk in detail. So the celiac trunk, it is a short wide vessel. So this image, if you observe here, this is the celiac trunk. It is a short wide vessel, and which is about 1.25 centimeters long. So it is very short, 1.25 centimeters long, and arises from the front of aorta immediately below the aortic opening of the diaphragm. So here this is the diaphragm here. So once you just reflect the diaphragm here, this is the celiac trunk. So immediately beneath the opening in the diaphragm, aortic opening, you're going to see the celiac trunk. So the origin of the celiac trunk, this one, it lies behind the omental bursa. This is called as the lesser sac or omental bursa. So this is the origin of celiac trunk here. Here in this image you can see this is the stomach, which is lifted up to visualize the vessels clearly. So this origin of the celiac trunk lies behind the omental bursa, and it is surrounded by celiac plexus of nerves, and as we have seen in the earlier part relations, the celiac trunk is sandwiched between the pancreas, tuber omental of the pancreas from below. This is the pancreas here. Here the tuber omental is there, which is a projection from the neck of the pancreas, tuber omental from below, and above you will see the papillary. This is the liver here. So papillary process of the liver is there from above, and tuber omental of the pancreas from below. So in between those two structures, the celiac trunk is sandwiched. But in this image, for visualizing it clearly, these two are reflected little bit up and down. Then the trunk of the artery proceeds forwards. So this is the trunk of the artery. It proceeds forwards and towards the, and somewhat towards the right, and then divides into three branches. So this is the celiac trunk here. It divides into three branches: left gastric, then common hepatic, and splenic. This is the splenic artery, and this is the common hepatic artery. This is the left gastric artery. So these are the three important branches coming from the celiac trunk. This one is the celiac trunk here, and this space is called as the lesser sac or the omental bursa. So celiac trunk lies behind the lesser sac. Now coming to the each artery, we will see. Now this one is the celiac trunk here. This is left gastric, this is the splenic, and this is the common hepatic artery. Three branches of the celiac trunk. Now coming to the left gastric artery, this is the smallest branch of the celiac trunk, but this provides major supply for the stomach, this left gastric. Though it is a small branch coming from the celiac trunk, it provides a major contribution to the stomach, and it passes upwards. This passes upwards and towards the left, towards the cardiac end of the stomach. This is the esophagus here, and this portion is called as cardiac end of the stomach. So the left gastric artery passes towards the cardiac end of the stomach, where it arches forwards. So it is arching forwards, and along the superior or left gastropancreatic fold, and reaches the lesser curvature of the stomach. This area is called as lesser curvature of the stomach. This is called greater curvature of the stomach. So the lesser, along the lesser curvature, it runs downwards, and within the lesser omentum, the left gastric anastomoses with the right gastric. This is the right gastric artery. which comes from the hepatic artery. This is the right gastric, and this is the left gastric coming directly from the celiac trunk. So both these right and left gastric arteries, they anastomose along the lesser curvature within the folds of the lesser omentum. Close to the cardiac orifice, the left gastric artery, it will provide some of the esophageal branches. So here you can see behind the liver, these branches are called as esophageal branches. So near to the cardiac orifice, the left gastric will supply some of the esophageal branches. Now coming to the common hepatic artery. This is the common hepatic artery coming from the celiac trunk. So this is the larger one compared to the left gastric. It is the larger one, and this passes towards the right side behind the omental bursa again. That means the lesser sac is called as omental bursa. So the common hepatic runs behind the omental bursa along the upper border of the body. This is called as the body of the pancreas, and this is the neck of the pancreas here. So along the upper border of the neck and body of the pancreas, this hepatic artery is running towards the right side, and on reaching the upper surface of first part of duodenum here. This is the first part of duodenum. So once it reaches here, the artery insinuates forwards beneath the peritoneal floor of the epiploic foramen along the inferior or right gastropancreatic fold, and reaches the right free margin of lesser omentum. So this artery, just remember that it reaches the right margin of the lesser omentum. Here the common hepatic artery divides into a right gastric branch. So this one is the right gastric branch, okay, and then the gastroduodenal branch, and occasionally posterior superior pancreaticoduodenal arteries. So posterior superior pancreaticoduodenal is an occasional branch, but at this level it gives off right gastric and gastroduodenal arteries. Thereafter the common hepatic artery continues upwards within the free margin of lesser omentum in front of the epiploic foramen as hepatic artery proper. Now here this area is called as hepatic artery proper, and which is accompanied by portal vein. Portal vein is not seen in this image, but here portal vein is present, and posteriorly it is present, and the bile duct on its right side. This is the bile duct. So here this is the hepatic artery proper. Posteriorly you will see the portal vein, and on the right we will see the bile duct on its right side. Now close to the porta hepatis, the hepatic artery proper divides into right and left. This is the right hepatic artery, and this is the left hepatic artery. So close to the porta hepatis is where there is entry of the hepatic artery and portal vein into the liver and exit of the bile duct. So that area is called as porta hepatis. So here the hepatic artery proper is going to divide into a right and left hepatic arteries, and these right and left hepatic arteries are going to supply the physiological right and left lobes of the liver and undergo further segmental distribution. So this right hepatic artery further gives the one more artery called as cystic artery, which supplies the gallbladder. This is the gallbladder here. So the right hepatic artery gives off a cystic artery which supplies the gallbladder. So the entire hepatic arterial system provides principally right gastric branch, gastroduodenal branch, and a cystic branch, right? So what is happening to the common hepatic? It is running towards the right side, and once it reaches the upper border of this first part of the duodenum, this is first part of the duodenum here, so upper border of this, once it reaches here, it is going to give rise to the right gastric artery and gastroduodenal artery, and occasionally posterior superior pancreatico-duodenal. Then it runs upwards, reaches the porta hepatis along the free margin of the lesser omentum, and then it divides into a right and left hepatic arteries. Proper hepatic artery gives rise to right and left hepatic arteries, and these right and left are going to supply the physiological right and left lobes of the liver. Now in this image what you are seeing is, this is the left lobe and this is the right lobe, which are anatomical lobes, but functionally different lobes are there. The left lobe of the liver is supplied by the branches coming from the left hepatic artery, and right lobe of the liver is supplied by the right hepatic artery. Then further, the right hepatic artery gives rise to a cystic artery which will supply the gallbladder, right? Then the right gastric artery, what is happening to the right gastric artery? It passes downwards and towards the left, runs along the lesser curvature of the stomach and anastomoses with the left gastric artery. So this we have already seen. Then gastroduodenal artery. This is the gastroduodenal artery. So it runs downwards behind the first part of the duodenum. It goes behind the first part of the duodenum and lodges in a groove at the junction of anterior surface of head and neck. Here this is the head of the pancreas and this is the neck of the pancreas. In between them there is a groove for the gastroduodenal artery. And on reaching the lower border of the duodenum here, the gastroduodenal artery divides into a superior pancreatico-duodenal artery. So here we can see superior pancreatico-duodenal artery, and the what is the other artery? Here the superior pancreatico-duodenal, this will again divide into anterior and posterior branches to supply respectively the two anterior and posterior surface of the duodenum. There is a superior pancreatico-duodenal artery. Then after supplying this, there will be anterior and posterior pancreatico-duodenal branches coming from the inferior pancreatico-duodenal artery, which is a branch of superior mesenteric artery. So these two will anastomose. That means the anterior and posterior branches of superior pancreatico-duodenal will anastomose with anterior and posterior branches of inferior pancreatico-duodenal arteries. And sometimes what happens is the posterior superior pancreatico-duodenal arises directly from the hepatic artery proper. Here we have seen occasionally it may give rise to the posterior superior pancreatico-duodenal, right? Then next branch of the gastroduodenal is, this is the gastroduodenal, right? So it has given the superior pancreatico-duodenal, and the other branch is the right gastroepiploic artery. So the gastroduodenal divides into superior pancreatico-duodenal and right gastroepiploic artery. So as the name indicates, right gastro, that means it supplies the stomach, and also epiploic is related to omentum. So that's why this artery is also called as right gastro-omental artery also. So it's going to supply the stomach as well as the omentum. So this right gastroepiploic artery passes towards the left side close to the greater curvature of the stomach, and within the two layers of anterior part of the greater omentum, and then anastomoses with the left gastroepiploic, which is a branch of splenic artery. Okay, so along the greater curvature also you will see anastomosis between two arteries. They are right gastroepiploic and left gastroepiploic. Along the lesser curvature of the stomach you will see anastomosis between the right gastric and the left gastric. Right? Then the gastroepiploic arteries provide branches to the stomach, and epiploic branches are given to the greater omentum. Sometimes the gastroduodenal artery provides a supraduodenal branch, which is also called as artery of Wilkie. So this gastroduodenal sometimes may give rise to supraduodenal branch. That artery is called as artery of Wilkie, which is an end artery and supplies the upper margin and adjoining surfaces of proximal half of first part of duodenum. So this is the first part of duodenum, right? So the proximal half of first part of the duodenum sometimes is supplied by this artery of Wilkie. So just remember that. Then this is the cystic artery, right? So cystic artery, usually it is derived from the right branch of the proper hepatic artery and passes downwards and to the right towards the gallbladder here, and at the neck of the gallbladder here, the cystic artery divides into superficial and deep branches. The superficial branches supply the peritoneal covered inferior surface of the gallbladder, and deep branches ramify in a loose areolar tissue between the liver and the superior surface of gallbladder. So it divides into superficial and deep branches. So cystic artery presents variations in the mode of origin which are of surgical interest, because in cholecystectomy, wherein gallstones are present, so surgery is done to remove the gallbladder, which is called as cholecystectomy. So while performing that surgery, the surgeon should be aware of variations in the origin of the cystic artery. So proper care is to be taken while understanding the origin of the cystic artery before performing the surgery. Right? Then next artery is the splenic artery. Splenic artery, it gives of this one is the splenic artery here. Okay. So splenic artery here, this stomach is just lifted upwards, so that it actually is covering this area, but it is lifted upwards, so that you can see this is the greater curvature of the stomach and this is the lesser curvature of the stomach. So to visualize the splenic artery clearly, the stomach is lifted upwards. So splenic artery is the largest branch of the celiac trunk and is remarkably tortuous. You can see the tortuosity here. Okay. And the artery passes to the left behind the omental bursa. So that is the space that was I was telling you. Lesser sac, which is present behind the stomach. So the artery passes along the upper border of the body. This is called as body of the pancreas, and this is the tail of pancreas. So along the upper border of the body and tail, the artery is passing towards the left side. In its course, it crosses in front of the left crus of diaphragm, which is not seen here, and left psoas major and sympathetic trunk, left suprarenal gland, and anterior surface of the left kidney. So all these structures are called as stomach bed, which will be discussed later on. And the artery then enters between the two layers of leno-renal ligament. Leno is related to the spleen and renal is related to kidney. So from the spleen to the kidney, extending between them, there is a fold of peritoneum called as leno-renal ligament. So the splenic artery enters between the two layers of the renal ligament, and then reaches the hilum here. This is called as hilum of the spleen, and it penetrates the hilum of the spleen by dividing into these segmental branches. 5 or more segmental branches are there. These branches what you are seeing here are called as segmental branches. So it enters the hilum, penetrates the hilum by dividing into these segmental branches. And besides the branches to the spleen, it also gives rise to pancreatic branches. These small branches what you are seeing are going to supply the pancreas. So these are all the pancreatic branches. Then it also gives rise to the short gastric branches. These are short gastric branches, and also this one is called as the left gastroepiploic artery, which ends by anastomosing with the right gastroepiploic artery, right? This is the right gastroepiploic, which is a branch of gastroduodenal, and left gastroepiploic is a branch of splenic artery. So these are the other branches. So what are the branches of splenic artery? Pancreatic branches, short gastric, segmental branches to the spleen, and left gastroepiploic branch, right? Now the pancreatic branches here, if we see, they are numerous branches, you can see them, and arise from the splenic artery when it runs along the upper border of the pancreas, body and tail of the pancreas, and these supply the entire organ except the head. So this is the head of the pancreas. So this head is supplied by the superior and inferior pancreaticoduodenal branches, whereas the body and the tail, they are supplied by the branches from the splenic artery. And one pancreatic branch here. So these are all the pancreatic branches. From this, one of them will be a larger one, and that will accompany the main pancreatic duct, which is known as arteria pancreatica magna. And a dorsal pancreatic branch is usually derived from the splenic artery and bifurcates into right and left branches. The right passes between neck and the uncinate process of the pancreas and joins with the ventral pancreaticoduodenal arcuate. So these will be discussed in detail when discussing the blood supply of the pancreas. For now, just remember there are numerous branches to the pancreas along the upper border of its body and the tail. One of them will be large, known as arteria pancreatica magna. The head of the pancreas is supplied by the superior and inferior pancreaticoduodenal arteries. And then short gastric arteries. These are all the short gastric branches. They 3 to 7 in number, arise from the terminal part of the splenic artery. This is the terminal part of the splenic artery. So they arise from its terminal part, around 3 to 7 branches, and supply the fundus of the stomach after passing between the layers of gastrosplenic ligament. Like the lienorenal ligament, there is a gastrosplenic ligament extending between the stomach and the spleen. So these short gastric branches are going to run in between the two layers of the gastrosplenic ligament and supply the fundus of the stomach. Remember that in this image the stomach is upside down, it is pulled upwards. So this is the fundus. Then next one is the gastroepiploic, left gastroepiploic artery here, this one. So this is derived from the terminal part of the splenic artery here close to the hilum of the spleen, and passes downwards to the right between gastrosplenic and anterior two layers of greater omentum, and it runs along the greater curvature and provides branches to both surfaces of the stomach, and elongated epiploic or omental branches to the greater omentum. I have already told you gastroepiploic means it supplies the stomach and the greater omentum. So that's why they are also called as gastro-omental branches also. The right and left gastroepiploic, also called as right and left omental branches, because they are going to supply the stomach and the greater omentum. The terminal part of the artery, that is the left gastroepiploic artery, continues as an omental branch which describes a looped course with the convexity downwards, and finally anastomosis with the anastomosis with the right gastroepiploic artery. The greater omentum is divided in partial gastrectomy operation below the right gastroepiploic artery, and in such case the nutrition of the greater omentum is derived from the omental branches of the left gastroepiploic artery. So these anastomoses help to maintain the circulation if one of the artery is to be ligated and removed during surgeries performed on the stomach. So in partial gastrectomy, when part of the stomach is removed, the right gastroepiploic artery is also removed. So that portion, the supply from the right gastroepiploic is compensated by the left gastroepiploic artery in such cases. So this is the splenic artery. Now, anomalies of the celiac trunk. These are certain anomalies we'll see. Here the common hepatic is there, left gastric and splenic, superior mesenteric, which is the normal thing. Then sometimes there will be gastrosplenic trunk here. That means there will be no hepatic. The hepatic and the splenic will form one trunk. This here we'll see the hepatosplenic trunk. Then hepatogastric trunk is seen here, right? And celiaco-mesenteric trunk here. That means the celiac trunk and the superior mesentery arise as a single trunk. So these are certain anomalies in the origin of the celiac artery. So obstruction of the common hepatic artery proximal to the right gastric artery may save the liver from necrosis due to an establishment of collateral circulation between gastric and gastroepiploic arteries. But when the occlusion affects the hepatic artery proper, then the necrosis of the liver is invariable. So this is one anomaly of the celiac trunk, wherein you see pentafurcation. That means the celiac trunk, instead of trifurcation into left gastric, splenic and common hepatic, it divides into 5 branches. That means the right inferior phrenic artery and left inferior phrenic artery is also derived from the celiac trunk here. So one trunk and you are seeing 5 branches. So this is called as pentafurcation of the celiac trunk. And just to summarize, the branches of the celiac trunk are also called as arteries of the foregut. Celiac trunk divides into left gastric, splenic and common hepatic. Left gastric gives rise to gastric branches and esophageal branches. Left gastric ends by anastomosing with the right gastric artery along the lesser curvature of the stomach. Then splenic artery gives rise to branches to the spleen, the segmental branches, then branches to the body and tail of the pancreas. Short gastric branches which will supply the fundus of the stomach runs in the gastrosplenic ligament, and left gastroomental or left gastroepiploic artery which runs along the greater curvature ends by anastomosing with the right gastroepiploic or right gastroomental artery. Then common hepatic artery gives rise to gastroduodenal and hepatic artery proper. The gastroduodenal gives rise to right gastroduodenal artery and superior anterior pancreaticoduodenal artery. The hepatic artery proper will give rise to the left branch of the proper hepatic and right gastric artery and right branch of the proper hepatic artery, and this also gives rise to the cystic artery. Some clinical aspect related to the celiac trunk. A peptic ulcer is an erosion in the mucosa of the stomach that commonly results from presence of H. pylori bacteria or the overuse of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medications like aspirin. If it becomes deep enough, that means this erosion, if it is deep enough, it may erode into a major vessel. Commonly the left gastric artery is eroded, resulting in massive blood loss. If the erosion is deep enough, then it erodes the left gastric artery in a peptic ulcer. Then splenic artery aneurysm. These are rare but are the third most common abdominal aneurysms after aneurysms of abdominal aorta and the iliac arteries. High blood pressure and smoking are the risk factors for aneurysm formation, and the treatment of choice is percutaneous endovascular treatment or an open operation if that is not possible. Aortic aneurysms are most commonly infrarenal, that means below the renal arteries. Then Pringle's maneuver, the liver is very vascular organ as it is supplied by hepatic arteries and the hepatic portal vein that carries venous blood from the bowels. Hence, in order to reduce blood loss during liver surgery, the portal triad can be clamped. So the portal triad consists of common bile duct, hepatic artery proper, and the hepatic portal vein. So these three together, if they are clamped, then we can reduce the blood loss during the liver surgery, and this clamping is called as Pringle's maneuver. And celiac artery compression syndrome. So the median arcuate ligament is a part of diaphragm, and it forms the crura of the diaphragm on either side of the abdominal aorta as it passes through the diaphragm. The insertion point of this ligament may be too low in some people, that is the median arcuate ligament can be attached too low, leading to compression of the celiac trunk. So this can result in epigastric pain resulting from ischemia, weight loss, and abdominal bruit are present. So treatment includes surgical decompression that is usually performed via laparoscopic operation. So these are certain clinical aspects related to the celiac trunk.